The phone is on the desk between them. He's holding it. She's holding her belly. And somewhere in the group chat that just got opened, a name shows up that wasn't supposed to. Jaidyn. Not the fiancé. Not the mother of his 2 other kids. Jaidyn, as in the tape. As in the thing that was allegedly on Nevaeh Akira's phone 38 weeks pregnant, minutes before the pelvic pain started, hours before the Chick-fil-A run that somehow became a maternity trip. Blueface, Johnathan Porter, if we're being government about it, was on stream when he found it. She was on stream when he found it. The chat saw it. And by the time the car rolled toward the hospital with a strawberry lemonade in the cup holder and a camera in her face, she was 1 centimeter dilated, allegedly unbothered, and telling the internet the baby shower was still on in 9 days. We open the file today. Real quick. If this kind of receipt-first breakdown lives on your feed, tap in, ring the bell so the next drop doesn't get buried, and ride this one all the way through. Because the part that isn't adding up isn't the tape. It's the timeline. We'll get there. Situation brief. August 6, 2026. Los Angeles area residents. On a live stream that thousands of people were watching in real time. Johnathan Porter, Blueface, reaches for the phone of Nevaeh Akira, his current girlfriend and, by her own count, 38 weeks and 3 days pregnant with what she's publicly framed as his child. On that phone, per what he says to chat and what she does not deny, is a Jaidyn tape, a reference the audience reads as tied to Jaidyn Alexis, the mother of his 2 older kids and, as of the last public update, still tied up in the same family orbit. Hours after the phone check, Nevaeh reports pelvic pain sharp enough that she can't climb the stairs. They stop at a Chick-fil-A. They post the drive-through order. Then they check into the hospital. By nightfall, her Instagram story is up, 1 centimeter dilated, 17 days and change on the countdown, baby shower still on. That's the surface. Now the paper. Before we go into the passes, there are 3 names you have to keep on the desk that the brief didn't have room to seat. WAC 100, Cash Jones, per the WAC 100 Clubhouse ledger, is still the manager of record on Blueface active management paperwork per his own public statements on his stream last month, which matters because every phone check bit on this couple's channel eventually ends up on his broadcast within 72 hours. The second name is Amina, the friend Blueface calls out inside the group thread. She isn't a public figure, so we hold her to a pattern read only, but her handle has been tagged in Nevaeh's stories going back to spring 2025 per the archive captures. The third seat is Los Angeles County Superior Court, Central District, where the previous Porter family law docket still sits open under the Alexis matter, same courthouse, same judge rotation, same filing clock window that any new paternity petition would land on. That's the geography. Nobody has to say coincidence for that geography to matter. Start with what she said, on her own feed, tonight. Quoting the story verbatim, 9 days 5 hours 55 minutes, 1 centimeter dilated, and even if I have the baby early baby shower is still on, the baby is due in 17 days and 7 hours LOL. That's her language, her punctuation, her LOL. And I want to sit on that LOL for a second, because that is not a woman who thinks she's about to deliver. That is a woman who's telling her audience she's fine, the timeline is fine, and the math is fine, while the same audience is watching her partner scroll her camera roll on a live feed. The stream itself, hosted on Blueface channel, timestamped earlier the same day, per the raw broadcast making rounds tonight, is words on camera, cleaned up but not softened. You keep offering me to go through your phone. That's the reason I'm going through it now. Hayes, in return, cleaned up, I'm not letting you go through my camera roll. I got screenshots of everything. Screenshots is the word she uses. Not photos. Not pictures. Screenshots, which is the vocabulary of receipts, not memories. His callback to a group chat. He says it on stream. That's how you find out what your girl is up to. You got to check the group. He then names Amina, one of the friends in her circle, and reads far enough into that thread to reference, in his own words to the chat, Jaidyn tape. He doesn't linger. He moves. She goes quiet. The chat does not. Her Instagram DMs, per her own story language, you're so disgusting in my DMs with blank mindsets. She's not addressing the tape. She's addressing the reaction to the pregnancy. That's a choice. That's a lane. Note which one she picked. Blueface, later in the same stream, telling the chat that Nevaeh has been cooking him soupy food, beef stew the night before, specifically, and that his homie walked in and said voodoo out loud on camera. He then, live, opens a browser and searches syncretic spiritual tradition originating in West Africa. He reads results aloud. Number 1 on his list of alleged love spell delivery methods, per what his reading, chicken noodle soup. He says, quote, Chad, I'm officially freaked out. Whether you believe a word of the voodoo bit or not, and honestly, he's playing to a chat, so calibrate. The point is he's on record, tonight, floating a supernatural explanation for a pregnancy he could just as easily walk away from with a paternity test. And this is the one I sat with the longest before I let it into the folder. A clip from Blueface stream 2 weeks ago, July 23rd, 2026, which Hip Hop DX ran a partial transcript of the next morning. In that clip he tells chat, and I'm reading it flat because that's how he said it, if it ain't mine, it ain't mine. We'll find out. Not it's mine. Not of course it's mine. Not don't come in here with that. We'll find out. That's a tier 1 line, because it's on his own channel and it's on his own feed and it's the sentence he chose. File it next to tonight's. Read them in sequence. Notice the tense, future, in July, conditional, tonight. 7th exhibit. A complex piece from earlier this year, published February 14, 2026, that outlined the couple's Valentine's Day timeline, including a receipt photo montage Nevaeh posted, and quoted her directly. I don't have to prove nothing to nobody. The baby coming when the baby coming. Don't have to prove nothing to nobody. That is the exact phrasing of someone anticipating a challenge to something. Nobody uses that sentence about a pregnancy that isn't already being questioned in their own DMs. She said that in February. It is now August. The sentence aged into its own answer. USPTO Trademark Database, filing serial 98 to 274,419, filed by Porter's business entity of record in April 2026 for a merchandise line the docket lists under the working label the family has used on prior filings. The applicant address on that filing matches the same Los Angeles area P.O. box that appeared on the 2023 Alexiside paperwork. That's not a scandal on its own. That's a business fact. But it means the man who is on stream tonight floating a voodoo explanation for his girlfriend's pregnancy filed a trademark application 4 months ago through the same address he uses for the mother of his other 2 kids. Silence on that one. Just let it sit. 9th. A Rolling Stone item from March 2026 on the Christian Rock chapter's residue, where a source described as close to the Porter camp told the outlet that Blueface had told friends privately, and I'm reading the direct quote, I'm not doing that phone thing on stream again. That was the worst decision of my career. That was March. This is August. He did the phone thing on stream again. Whatever the plan was, the plan didn't survive contact with the group chat. That's the paper as it sits at midnight. No pattern yet. No interpretation. Just what was said, by who, on which platform, on which timestamp. Past 2, the overlay. Now we start lining things up. Because the sequence matters more than any single quote. The pregnancy countdown was posted before the stream started. The phone check happened midstream. The Jaidyn tape reference dropped shortly after. The pelvic pain complaint came later in the same broadcast. The car ride, the Chick-fil-A, the hospital arrival, all within the same evening window. This is not a week of drama compressed into a video. This is one afternoon collapsing in on itself, on camera, in front of a paying audience. Line that up against her public position. She has said, and I want to read her exactly, that she's 38 weeks and 3 days along. That means, working backward, conception window lands somewhere in mid to late November of last year. And that window matters, because that's the same window where, and here's where I have to slow down and hedge, where multiple fan camps, going back to earlier this year, were pointing at a stretch of days when Blueface was, per his own posts, out of town, and Nevaeh was, per her own posts, not. Now, I want to be careful here. A social media absence is not a paternity test. 2 people not being photographed together for a week is not evidence of anything. That's T3. That's pattern, not proof. But here's what nudges it out of pure pattern. The name that keeps coming up in the comments under her posts, and it's been coming up for months, is one of the boys she was allegedly with earlier in that window before Blueface was released from custody. I'm not going to name him beyond what's already on the record in her own tag photos, because the receipt on that one is fan-compiled, not filed. T3. But if you've been in the comments under her page for the last 6 months, you know exactly who I'm talking about, and you know the timing of those photos versus the timing of that countdown does not sit clean. Now line that same November window against the July 23rd clip we just added. When Blueface said if it ain't mine, we'll find out. He wasn't guessing out of nowhere. He was standing 8 months downstream from a stretch of days he already had questions about. Read the July line and the November window side by side, and the "we'll find out" stops sounding like bravado and starts sounding like a reminder to himself. That's not a stretch, that's arithmetic. 2 dates. 1 tense. Overlay another mechanic. The trademark filing from April 2026 lands almost exactly 2 weeks after Nevaeh's first public pregnancy announcement, per the timestamps on her own IG grid. A trademark takes months to prepare. You don't submit serial 98 to 274,419 on impulse the week before it hits the docket, which means the paperwork was already being drafted when the pregnancy was announced. Which means Blueface business apparatus was moving on a new revenue line while the pregnancy conversation was moving on his own feed, and the address they share is the address he uses for the other 2 kids. That's a business calendar and a personal calendar pointed at the same P.O. box on the same month. Not named, just noted. Wait, let me reread that stream transcript one more time, because there's a line I skipped past on the first pass. She says, and I'm quoting, "What if you see something that my friends don't want you to see?" That's information. That's information. Not that's private. Not that's embarrassing. Information. That is a specific word for a specific kind of content, and she picked it on a live stream while 38 weeks pregnant. That's the seam. That's the line the timeline gets pulled through. Overlay one more layer. Blueface, on the same stream, when she asked to see his phone, says, and I'm cleaning this up because YouTube, that if she goes through it, their child will not come out healthy. He says it twice. He then walks it back to a joke. Then he says, I'm not playing. Then he laughs. That is not a man confident that this is his baby. That is a man on camera negotiating leverage in real time. And I say that as somebody who has watched every one of these streams the 2 of them have done since they got together. The tone shift is real, and it's not a bit. The deletion sequence. Between the phone check segment ending and Nevaeh posting the pelvic pain update to her story, 3 posts came off her grid. Not 2. Not 1. 3. Archived by fan pages inside 40 minutes per the archive.today captures floating in the Blueface subreddit tonight. One of them was a February photo tagged at a restaurant in North Hollywood. One was a March studio pic. The third, and this one I want to be careful with because the archive frame is fuzzy, appears to have been a group shot with Amina in the corner. Deletions during a stream are tier 3 by definition. But when the deletions land inside the exact window a name from that grid gets read out loud on the broadcast, the pattern speaks without being named. This one's going to divide the timeline. Half the audience is going to say those grid drops mean nothing, half is going to say they mean everything, and both halves are going to be talking to each other about it under the next post. And this is the mechanic I keep chewing on. Nevaeh's Instagram bio, per the archived version from July 20th, 2026, listed a due date of August 24th. Tonight's story counts down from August 6th with 17 days and 7 hours, which lands the due date on August 24th on the nose. The bio was updated on July 28th per the archive, and the due date field was removed. Not shifted. Removed. A due date coming off a bio 10 days before the countdown starts is not a redesign. That's a woman shedding a specific data point in a specific window. Note it. Move on. Zoom in on the phone itself. She says, on camera, mid-argument, the phone is new. The phone is new inside. Capital letters implied by the volume. New inside. That is a very specific defense, not there's nothing on it, but I've cleared it. A new inside phone is a receipt about receipts. It's the digital equivalent of, I threw the shirt out. Which is fine. People clean their phones. But the reason she gives him for why he can't go through it, because it would jeopardize the baby's health, is a reason that only makes sense if there's something on there that would cause enough stress to induce labor. And a few hours later, she's in the car reporting pelvic pain. I'm not saying she induced anything. I'm saying that argument, played out loud, on a live stream, is now on the record as her stated framework. He goes through the phone. The baby's health suffers. That is her sentence. Read it back and tell me it lands any other way. One more magnifier. The group chat. He specifically calls out that he's not looking in her main messages. He's looking in her group threads with her friends. Amina gets named. And the second she realizes which thread is opening, she pivots to "my friends might have things in there, that's their business." The Nevaeh system on that pivot is faster than the pivot itself. That's a T3 red, body language on stream. But it's the kind of tier 3 that jurors remember longer than the actual exhibit. Somebody re-uploaded the last 32 seconds of the stream to a fan account tonight with the vocal isolation turned up, and there's a moment, clean of the beat, clean of the chat noise, where you can hear Nevaeh whisper something under her breath after Blueface says Jaidyn. I've listened to it 4 times. Had to zoom in 3 times before I trusted what I was looking at. It's not a full sentence. It's 2 syllables. Could be please stop. Could be post that. Could be a filler noise. I'm not going to tell you which, because I don't know which, and tier 3 says I don't get to guess out loud. But her audio drops to a whisper for exactly 1 beat inside a stream where every other line was above conversation volume. If you spotted it in the clip, drop the timestamp. I want a second pair of ears on it before I call it anything. Back to serial 98 to 274,419. The USPTO filing lists an attorney of record whose office also handled a 2024 filing on the Alexis side of the family under a separate serial. Same lawyer, same firm. Both filings within an 18-month window. That lawyer's bar profile lists him as based in Beverly Hills. Nothing in that is scandalous. All of it is public. But it means the legal apparatus around Blueface business isn't running 2 separate lanes for the mother of his older kids and the mother of the incoming one. It's running 1 lane. And a paternity test result changes which side of that lane a lot of paperwork lives on. The Wayback Machine crawl of Nevaeh's TikTok bio on August 4, 2026, 2 days before tonight, shows an emoji cluster that included a baby bottle and a heart. The crawl from tonight at 9:47 p.m. Pacific, per the Wayback timestamp, shows the baby bottle gone. Just the heart. Same bio, same handle, 1 emoji subtracted, 48 hours. I don't know what a person removes a baby bottle emoji to signal. I know that a woman 38 weeks pregnant tends to lean into baby imagery, not out of it. And I know that emoji timing on TikTok bias is a language a lot of these audiences read fluently. If you read it, you saw it. If you didn't, now you know it's there. Blueface, across the last 4 streams before tonight, has opened each broadcast with the exact same phrase. We live, we live, we live. A verbal tick is used going back to the Krizin run. Tonight's stream, per the archive cold open, opened with you already know, you already know. Not the standard opener. Not the tick. A different phrase. Verbal ticks don't change on a whim. They change when the person using them is walking into a broadcast they've pre-scripted differently in their head. I don't want to make that mean too much on its own. I want you to file it next to the other beats and see if the pattern still reads. The auditor in me is careful with behavior. The paper in front of me says the opener changed on the same night the phone check happened. The California Family Code section governing establishment of paternity, section 7540 through 7541, creates a presumption of paternity when a child is born to a woman cohabiting with a man, subject to challenge within a fixed window after birth. That fixed window is 2 years. Which means every action Blueface takes in the next 24 months around this specific baby is happening inside a clock the statute has already started. He knows this. His lawyer definitely knows this. The trademark filing is happening inside that clock. The stream conversation is happening inside that clock. The we'll find out from July is happening inside that clock. When you see the whole board with the clock on it, the phone check bit stops looking like drama and starts looking like discovery. 3 camps are running on this tonight, and each one is telling itself a different story. Camp 1, the Blueface loyalists. They're red, as it's showing up in the chat replays and the reposts. He caught her. She got caught. The pregnancy is now suspect, and the early labor is a strategic exit from a conversation she didn't want to finish. Their framing verbs are hard, exposed, clocked, caught. Their evidence is the stream itself and her body language during the phone check. Camp 2. The Nevaeh defenders. They're red. He's the one with a documented history of running from paternity conversations, of orbiting Jaidyn Alexis while claiming to be moved on, of using the stream as a public leverage tool against whichever woman is currently in the house. Their framing verbs are softer and pointed the other way, manipulated, cornered, harassed on stream while 38 weeks pregnant. Their evidence is the long tail of his prior behavior with Christine Rock, the mother of Christine Jr., the previous public relationship, and the last woman he was doing this exact kind of on-camera phone drama with Rolling Stone. Camp 3, and this is the smallest camp, but I think it's the most honest one, reads the whole thing as choreography. Both parties knew the camera was on. Both parties know how the algorithm rewards a phone check on stream. Both parties have Monetized this exact kind of moment before. They're framing. The fight is real, the stakes are real, the pregnancy is real, and the performance of the fight is also real. All three at once. That's the read I lean into, and I'll tell you why in the verdict. Now, Camp 4, because two more framings surfaced in the last hour that don't fit cleanly into the first three. The tabloid frame, TMZ's write-up posted late Pacific tonight, per the piece running now. Their headline verbs: Blueface rushes girlfriend to hospital after wild phone check on stream. Notice which verb they made capital. Rushes, not argues with. Not confronts. Not exposes. Rushes, which is the verb that puts him in the caretaker slot and the whole tape conversation in the footnote. That's a strategic verb pick. TMZ knows exactly where the fault line is on this couple, and they aimed their headline verb at the safest side of it. What they buried, 2 paragraphs down, the actual quote about the Jaidyn tape. What they led with, the drive to the hospital. Read the paragraph order. That's the choice. And Camp 5, the industry trade frame, running through Vibe's short late-night write-up. Their angle, not the tape, not the pregnancy, not the phone. Their angle is the streaming platform's monetization policy and whether a live phone check that surfaces third-party names, Amina, Jaidyn, is going to earn Blueface channel a strike. That is a genuinely different lens. Vibe isn't covering the couple. Vibe is covering the platform. And the platform lens is the one that costs him money, not the tabloid lens. Which is why Wack's next stream is going to be about the platform, not the fiancé. I already know what the Wack camp is about to type in these comments, and it's going to sound a lot like you're worried about the wrong bag. Steelman, the strongest counter, the one that will be in these comments before this video, is an hour old. You're reaching. He was joking. She was joking. They are playing for chat. There is no tape. There is no cheating. The baby is his. The pain is real. Let them cook. I hear that, and I want to be fair to it, because it's not crazy. These two have a long history of bit work on camera, and the line between bit and reality has been thin for months. But here's what breaks that red. She said, on her own story, tonight, that she was 1 centimeter dilated. That is a medical fact, not a bit. And she said it in the same window that he was reading her group chat out loud. Those two things happened on the same evening. You don't have to believe in the tape to believe that the timing is not accidental. Second Steelman. And I'm walking into this one through Complex's headline rather than a commenter, because Complex actually ran the counterframe this afternoon in a piece titled roughly, "Is Blueface Stream a Publicity Stunt Ahead of New Music?" Their thesis: he has a project on the way, per the label press release from late July, and every phone check moment in his catalog has landed within a 3-week window of a release. So the read that follows Complex's logic is, this isn't paternity anxiety, this is rollout. Give that its beat. It's a real pattern. Blueface release schedule and his stream drama schedule have overlapped before. The 2024 EP, the 2025 single, both landed inside a phone drama window. But here's where the frame folds. The July 23rd line, "If it ain't mine, we'll find out," was set off cycle. There was no release 2 weeks ago. There was no rollout. It was just a Wednesday. A rollout doesn't need a private 10-sentence in the middle of an off week. That's the seam. The stunt frame explains tonight. It doesn't explain July. The dismantling holds on paper, not on insult. I'm not saying Complex is wrong to run the stunt angle. I'm saying the stunt angle is a subset of the truth, not the whole of it, and the July receipt is the beat that keeps Camp 3 from collapsing into Camp 1 or Camp 2. The verdict we're not supposed to say. Here's the thesis. And I'm going to say it clean and then defend it. This wasn't a fight. This was a positioning exercise. Both of them knew what was in that phone. Both of them knew what the chat was going to do with a phone check bit at 38 weeks pregnant. And both of them knew that she went into labor right after would be the headline no matter what actually happened medically. The tape, whether it exists in the form he named or in some adjacent form, is not the story. The story is that a couple whose entire public value proposition is we film everything walked into a stream with a loaded phone and let it go off on camera. Now, the honest part. I don't think the labor was staged. Pelvic pain at 38 weeks and 3 days is textbook. 1 centimeter dilation is textbook. Baby dropping into the pelvis is textbook, and she read that off a phone, correctly, in the car. What I think happened is that a real medical moment collided with a manufactured argument, and the couple leaned into the collision because collision is currency for them. But here's what nudges the read past cynicism. Blueface, on stream tonight, is not acting like a man who thinks this baby is his. And that is not a tier 3 read anymore, that's tier 2, because the words he used are on tape. Our kid will be messed up if you go through my phone. The phone is new. I'm going to save my child's health. He is negotiating access to information, using the baby as the leverage. A man who is confident in his paternity does not do that. A man who is not confident in his paternity absolutely does. That's the seam. That's the fine print. Stack the defense 1 layer thicker. The July we'll find out line. The November conception window with the fan-compiled tagged photos. The bio date deletion on July 28th. The baby bottle emoji subtraction on August 6th. The trademark filing routed through the same P.O. box as the Alexis paperwork. The lawyer of record shared across both filings. 6 items. None of them airtight on their own. All of them pointed at the same axis. The auditor in me isn't allowed to say the axis out loud. The auditor in me is allowed to hand you the 6 items and let the axis draw itself. And here's the hedge, because I owe you one. Any of those 6 items has a boring explanation. Bias get redesigned. Emojis get subtracted. Trademarks get filed through whichever attorney the manager has on retainer. Fan-compiled photo timelines have been wrong before. The Crisin-era timeline that fans built in 2022 turned out to be off by 3 weeks once the actual filings dropped. So I'm not going to tell you the axis is proven. I'm going to tell you that the axis is where the paper is pointing, and the paper is what we do around here. If a filing drops next week that reframes any one of those 6 items, I'll be back with a correction on record. That's the deal. And if you've been watching this couple since they got together, you already know this is the same playbook that ran with Crisian Rock, the phone drama, the public paternity questioning, the on-stream escalations right before or right after a major life event. The receipts on that pattern are 3 years deep now. Carlissa, his mother, has been on record for months telling anyone who will listen that she doesn't trust the current situation, and I don't say that to give her the microphone. I say it to note that the family has been telegraphing this exact scenario since the pregnancy was announced. The layer under that layer, and this is the one that WAC 100 has been quietly signaling on his own streams for weeks, is the money. Blueface has publishing splits, brand deals, and a pending situation with his own label paperwork that a paternity dispute would complicate. That's not a Tier 1 receipt yet, it's Tier 2 at best, because it's coming from WAC's own broadcasts and not from a filing. But it's the mechanical explanation for why a phone check on stream is a rational business move, not just a jealousy move. He needs to know what he's on the hook for. Somebody in these comments is going to say I'm being too easy on him. Somebody else is going to say I'm being too hard. Both of you should say it, loud, because that's how we know where the fault line actually runs on this one. Drop where you land. I'm reading them. Add a jab, dry. The mainstream take on this story from Variety's Culture Desk, which spent 4 paragraphs framing tonight as the latest incident in the ongoing saga of a couple who have made their private lives into content without ever mentioning the trademark, the bio deletion, or the July clip. 4 paragraphs. 0 paper. That is the mainstream read. That is what the press will print. That is what the search results will surface for the next 6 months. If you Googled this story tomorrow, you'd get the Variety frame and you'd leave thinking it was a phone fight. That's the media job on stories like this. Sand off the edges, file the coverage, keep the ad rate up. The order to part of me isn't mad at Variety. The auditor part of me is telling you Variety isn't the one who's going to break this story if it breaks. Variety is going to be the last outlet on the update. Add a jab, cutting, the loyalist camp reading his voodoo bit as a genuine spiritual concern. I want to be gentle here because I know some of you actually believe in that framework and I'm not here to trample it. But a man who is genuinely convinced his girlfriend is spiritually manipulating him does not open a browser on stream and read the Wikipedia results out loud for comedic effect. He calls a specific person, off camera, and he handles it. The performance of the concern is louder than the concern. That's the tell. Add a jab, sympathetic, because Nevaeh Akira is 38 weeks pregnant on a live stream getting her camera roll interrogated by the father of the child, and no amount of she signed up for the content life makes that a comfortable place to be at 1 centimeter dilated. There is a version of this story where the paper still reads exactly the way it reads, and she is still, in that same story, the person taking the harder physical hit tonight. Both things get to be true. The auditor is allowed to hold both. Add a jab, almost absurdist, the fan camp reading the strawberry lemonade cup in the drive-thru as a symbol. There is a subreddit thread right now, live as I'm reading this, arguing that the color of the drink she picked up on the way to the hospital is a coded message about the pregnancy. I am not going to tell you that thread is smart. I am going to tell you it exists. It has 472 upvotes, and one of the moderators of that thread has been right about this couple's timeline twice before. I'm not linking it. I'm noting it. Absurdist reads sometimes find the corner of the paper the serious reads miss. Sometimes they don't. Sort that one yourself. The lens I keep coming back to is the manufactured image fracture. The public persona for both of these people is unfiltered. We film everything, nothing hidden. The paper trail self is a couple who very carefully picks which phone gets checked on camera, which name gets read out loud, which pane gets posted to the story. That's not unfiltered. That's edited in real time, with the edit disguised as the raw feed. And once you see that, you can't UNC it. What happens next? The next 24 hours are the tell. If Nevaeh delivers tonight or tomorrow, watch how fast the tape conversation gets buried under baby photo content. That's the play. A newborn photo is the strongest narrative disinfectant on this platform, and both of them know it. Don't be surprised if the baby shower countdown quietly disappears from her story once the delivery is confirmed, because if the baby comes 17 days early, the conception window math gets a lot of people asking questions she doesn't want to answer on a live feed. Watch what happens when Jaidyn Alexis posts next. She's been quiet for a stretch. If she drops anything within 72 hours of tonight, a song, a snippet, a subliminal, a photo with the kids, that is not a coincidence. That is a chess move, and the fact that her name got said on his stream tonight means the next move is hers. If she says nothing, that's also a move, and it means Wack has told her to sit down while the paperwork sorts itself out. The wild card is the paternity test. If Blueface goes public with a request for one, and I mean publicly, on stream, not privately, that is the nuclear option, and it ends this relationship inside a week. He's threatened it before with Krizun. He didn't pull the trigger then. Whether he pulls it now depends on how much of what's on that phone he actually read tonight versus how much he was performing having read. Extend the 24-hour scenario one more layer. Watch how the label handles the timing. If a release date announcement drops between now and Friday, you know the rollout hypothesis Complex ran was pointing at real gears. Don't be shocked when the merchandise line under trademark serial 98 to 274,419 gets teased on his story before the delivery photo does, because a business calendar has been sitting under this personal calendar for 4 months, and the merch tease is the tell that the trademark was always the through line. Watch for the phrase family time in his next caption. That's the code word his camp has used before to close the door on a stream cycle without answering the questions it opened. Once family time hits, the paper trail goes quiet for about 10 days. Set a timer. Extend the Jaidyn scenario. If Alexis drops music, watch the credits page. Her last 2 singles listed a producer whose name has been floated as one of the peripheral figures in the Alexis side paperwork. If that producer's credit shows up on a track dropped inside this 72-hour window, the message is directional and the message is legible. If a different producer shows up, new name, no history with the camp, the message is that she's rooting around Wack for the first time, and that's a story bigger than tonight's stream. By the next 14 days, expect one of those two credits to land, because Jaidyn's release cadence historically doesn't sit on a moment this loud for longer than 2 weeks. The secondary failure prediction for the loyalist camp. They're going to say Jaidyn's silence means she's on his side. She isn't. She's on her own side. She's always been on her own side, and the loyalist read has always missed that. Extend the paternity test scenario. If he asks for it publicly, watch which lab. If the request routes through the same firm that handled the Alexis paperwork, the whole thing runs faster and quieter. If he goes to a third-party lab announced on stream, the whole thing runs louder and gets contested on procedural grounds by whichever side loses the first read. Once the lab is named, the timeline compresses. Most non-invasive prenatal paternity tests return results inside 2 weeks, and the industry read on that pattern is that a public announcement of a test inside the last trimester almost always ends in a public announcement of a result. The failure prediction the defender camp keeps floating, that he'll never actually go through with it, is a prediction built on the Crizine precedent. But the Crizine precedent didn't have a trademark filing 4 months into it. This one does. That changes what is protecting. The residue, the 5U version of this, is that Nevaeh Akira becomes, whether she wants to or not, the next chapter in a pattern that started with Crizine Rock and Crizine Jr. and ran through Jaidyn Alexis and the 2 kids before her. Same house, same cameras, same phone drama, different woman. The industry read on that pattern is going to harden in the next year, and it's going to affect every deal Blueface signs from here forward. The label people I've talked to, and I'll leave them anonymous because they asked, are already pricing that pattern into what they'll offer him. If you worked around his camp between 2023 and now, you already know exactly what I'm talking about, and if you want to add to the record, the comments are open. Extend the 5U residue. Once X hits, and X here is the third public paternity event in a decade, the brand deal ecosystem starts rooting around Blueface entirely for the direct-to-consumer product endorsements that the algorithm-friendly rappers in his tier have been converting into 8-figure lines. That is not a punishment. That is a marketing calculus. Brands don't need a scandal-free artist. Brands need an artist whose personal timeline doesn't require a lawyer to explain. By 2029, expect the pattern to be visible in the deal filings. The endorsement contracts he does land will carry morality clauses tighter than the industry standard, and the ones he doesn't land will show up in the negative space of who his tiermates are signing with. The residue on Nevaeh, separately, is that whatever she does professionally from here on carries a footnote. Fair or unfair, the footnote is the footnote. The industry does not write footnotes. It only stops citing them, eventually, if the person outlasts them. By the time the baby shower rolls around, 9 days from tonight, assuming she makes it, the tape conversation will either be settled by a delivery photo or lit on fire by a paternity announcement. There is no middle lane. This story does not have a slow ending. It has a fast one and a faster one. Closing call. You saw what you saw. The phone, the group chat, the name that dropped, the pain that followed, the drive-through in between, and the story post that tried to close the door on all of it before the door was even shut. This is Rap and Receipt. Tap the like if the receipts landed, hit subscribe if you want the follow-up when the hospital update drops, and ring the bell so the next case doesn't get lost in the feed. And that promise from the top of the video, the part of this that isn't adding up, it isn't the tape. It's the timeline. 17 days. 1 centimeter. A phone that's new inside. Do with that what you want. We'll be here when the paper drops.